feel like I say this every time I film in my room at home, but it is literally impossible to find like a nice place to film. Like I've tried in front of my window, but the background is always like a mess. I tried on my bed one time, but there's not really anywhere to set up the camera. And then I tried in this little corner, and something's always wrong. Something's always whack. Like the lighting is not. Oh, it really gets me. And then, like, my head is being cut off half the time because I film these videos on my phone. And when you're using the reverse camera, I can't see, like, what the angles are looking like. And I'm genuinely just crossing my fingers and, like, praying. Which doesn't always work. And it hasn't worked the past few times. So we've gone back to front-facing camera. And I also say this every video, but you will hear cars passing by my window. And at times they will sound quite loud. And you might also hear some fireworks because it is currently the 1st of January, so New Year's Day, people are still setting off fireworks. I don't know. Like, they started kicking off at like 4 p.m. Guys, what is actually going on? But today I thought we'd revisit, you know, we've been here before, if you will. My first ever video was all the books that I want to read in 2025. As some of you, the OGs, my real ones, will remember. And I think I gave about 36, 37 books that I wanted to read. Out of those books, how many did I read? That's a really good question. So I counted it up. It was about 13 out of these, like, 37. I didn't really get through as many as I'd hoped. I did somehow read 71 books last year, though. So that's not to say that I just wasn't reading. It's more just I got some new books that I maybe wanted to read. Quite a lot of those books were probably plays, which I don't ever put on my, like, what I want to read in a year, because they're not. I feel like I read them more for my course than I do just, like, generally. That's not to say that I don't enjoy a play. It's just that, like, they're like a different thing almost in my brain, but also not, if that makes sense. One day I'll deep that more. At some point I will do like I hope I would like to do a reading wrap up video where I kind of talk about all the books I read, and we can, like, go through the stats, if you will. I might come up with a PowerPoint presentation, you never know, on breaking up, like, what it is I actually read, like how many of them were audiobooks, how many of them were plays, how many of them were books under 300 pages, that kind of thing, you know? Because I don't know how I read 71 books, and yet I only managed to read 13 out of the like 40 odd that I said I wanted to read at the start of last year. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so at some point I'll break that down and we can figure it out. But then again, I figured I would do a similar thing for this year because it's fun. And I like looking at my books, and I like going, okay, which ones do I want to like prioritize reading this year, you know? And so obviously, kind of goes without saying, the ones I do want to prioritize reading this year are the ones that I didn't get around to reading last year. I would say that's quite. I always have this thing where, like, the books that have, like, been on my, like, to be read list the longest, I feel kind of bad towards, and I'm like, I feel like I should read you, like, I feel like I should prioritize you because you've been waiting so long. And so yeah, just similar kind of concept. I'm gonna prioritize those. All of the books that you heard me say that I was gonna read last year and I didn't, I'm gonna try lock in. Okay, guys, this year's the year. I know I said that last year, but this year's the year. I was watching it back because I, like, wanted to count up how many books I read, and I was on about this series, like the duology by Chloe Gong, like These Violent Delights, and I was saying about how, like, this is the year I'm gonna experience Chloe Gong. She did not. I didn't read anything by Chloe Gong last year. I actually just lied. So, yeah. Which then means that the 30 odd, 35 books or whatever that I'm gonna mention today whilst it's the same amount of books that I was on about last year, there's at least 20 odd other books on top of that. So in reality, I'm giving myself like 50 books to read in it, but it's fine, okay? I was gonna say the point isn't to read them, but that's kind of counterintuitive. But the point is to set goals. Yes, New Year's resolution. Here's 50 books that I want to read in a year. Will it happen? No. I know myself. But it's a bit fun, guys, you know. No one actually said no. I never promised I would do it. I don't really know how to defend myself in this one. I feel like I'm digging a hole and I can't quite escape it. You might notice a recurring theme in this book, just as a disclaimer. I actually know very little about the books that I have purchased that I would like to read. Because I'm on TikTok, as many of us are, and there's this thing, it's called BookTok, and it's gained a bit of a reputation, if you will. Let's just say the romance side of BookTok is not my side of BookTok. Romance is not my genre. I don't read it. I don't think I couldn't tell you if I read. I think I read the Pumpkin Spice Latte for a video, and that was maybe one of the only romance books I read. I love books with a romance subplot. Do not get me wrong. I messed that up, if you will. I was gonna swear, but I never know what the rules are around swearing on YouTube, to be honest, and that's besides the point. I love that. I love when they do a good romance subplot, but romance itself, not my genre. That's besides the point. The side of TikTok where I see book content is people being like, here's some really good, like, fantasy books I think you should read. Like, here are my, like favorite books. And when someone is really passionate, and when I see a book and it's reoccurring, I'm like, okay. For example, one of them which I don't own, which I really want to get, is Sword of Kaigen by, I don't know, like ML Rio. If I've got that right, I'm going to be very impressed with myself, but I bet you I've not. And I don't know, like, I can't remember what it's about. Like, at some point, someone on the internet will have explained the plot to me, right? And I will have gone, yes, this sounds good. But at the same time, it's in one ear, out the other, because all I need to know is that, like, a lot of people have really enjoyed it, and then I want to read it and I want to know what it's about. Maybe I have FOMO. Maybe that's what it is, to be honest. And yet somehow it works, because there's a certain types of books on BookTok, I forgot the name, where it's really not worth reading them. But somehow I've figured out how to avoid those ones. Like, somehow I just know when I'm not gonna like a book. Even though I don't know how to explain it, guys. I actually don't know how to, like, defend myself and defend my behavior. But some of these, I will hold them up and I will go, yeah, and I want to read this. I don't really know what it's about, and I will attempt to read the blurb and then summarize the blurb. But if you're looking at this for, like, a book recommendation video, it's not really, because I've not read them. So how can I recommend them? I can recommend reading them along with me. 2026. That's what this video is about. Read the books that I'm probably maybe gonna attempt to read this year alongside me. And I'm just gonna hop to it. I think I had another disclaimer, but I don't remember what that was. So if it comes to me, I'll let you know. Well, should we start? They're all laid out in categories. We'll go through my categories where there's one book. I've done it kind of like by genre, similar to what I did last year. If people remember, I gave it up by genre. Yeah, I said that already. So there's 4 books here that are just like, they're the only ones of their genre, right? They're withholding the genre right now. Upholding the genre right now. So I figure we'll start with them. Let's start with sci-fi. I would really like to read. Currently, it's the only sci-fi book I have. My thoughts on sci-fi, thank you for asking. As much as I love fantasy, something about sci-fi isn't as with me. Bearing in mind I'm saying all of this, but I don't know much about the book, and it could very well be dystopian. It's like one of those two in my brain. For some reason, they're really similar. Yeah, so I don't actually read a lot of sci-fi books. That's not to say that I don't enjoy them, but I think I enjoy them less, and I just know that it's not my kind of story that I naturally gravitate to, if you will. But I do dabble. And I have really enjoyed sci-fi in the past. Again, it's not that I'm sworn off the genre completely. It's just that it's not my go-to, do you know what I mean? Hence why there's only like one book in this category this year. And that is The Ministry of Time. That was my other disclaimer. I was gonna say that I'm not original. And none of my taste is original. And so if you're like involved in the book community and if you're entrenched in that world, none of these... Like, I will be surprised if there's a book that you, like, haven't heard of. So, again, it's not a recommendation video. It's just kind of like a me yapping, being like, this is what I want to read, because I'm a nerd. I hope that's okay with everyone. Anyway, I want to read The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. Yep. It is about... Next book. I actually don't know what it's about. Similarly, this was very popular. Lots of people were talking about it. And I said, okay, I want to know what everyone's talking about. I want to know what the hype is. That's going to be a recurring theme. I gave you the warning. I gave you the warning. You can't be mad about it. Let me read the blurb. Okay, so this book is actually the blurb, which maybe I should have read before this book entered my personal library, if you will. It's not what I thought. There's this... It's a woman. I don't know her name. And she's working for this company to be like a bridge between her and someone who they have taken from history. Supposedly. Let me fact check. It's to test whether time travel is feasible. I'm not sure how bringing people from the past tests if time travel is feasible, but apparently it is. So she's doing that, and she's basically living with this guy from history from like 1847. Apparently he was a former Victorian polar explorer. Okay? And now he's in this world with, as they quote on the back, washing machines, feminism, God, and Spotify. What a troubling time this must be for this man. To encounter feminism. God, that. And then apparently, they're saying that, like, as time goes on, and they spend this summer together, they kind of become friends, and then it's kind of implied that they might become more. Have I bought a romance book that's sci-fi? I don't know. Now I'm scared. All of my talk about avoiding books that I don't think I'm gonna enjoy, I'm suddenly doubting. I'm suddenly worrying that that the karmic energy of that statement is gonna, like, come back to me. But that's what this book is about. We'll see if I'm enjoying. Now I'm more intrigued, because I'm like, damn, will I? It might be really good. Everyone was saying it's really good, and I'm gonna choose to trust them. Let's move on. My next book, I was gonna say we all know, but people probably actually don't know, but I really enjoy a good Greek mythology novel. Last year I read Clytemnestra. They've gotten really popular. Like, every time I go into a store, like, Jennifer Saint is always on them tables, the little tables in Waterstones where it's like, new releases, like, this, like, you should read this book, you know, the book recommendation table, you know what I'm on about. She's done, like, tons of them. Which one did I read? I read Ariadne by her, like, 2 years ago, and then she's got Electra, which I do have, but it's not on this list of books I want to read this year, because I'm kind of like, my point to this tangent is that as much as they're, like, getting a lot bigger, and I see a lot more of them coming out, for some reason I like to pace myself through them. You know, I'm like, if I had, like, because I've got Medea as well, so I've got 3 sitting in the backlogs that I could read. But I'm like, let me just say I'm gonna read one. Let me just pace myself. I don't know why, but that's just how it is. So this one, which I do want to read, probably, if I'm being honest, because it's a physical copy and my other two are digital copies, and I just prefer a physical novel. That's a problem I'm working with. I'm working on. Because I have some really good books digitally that I should really read, but because it's digitally, I'm a little like more hesitant to do it. And that is 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. Now you might be thinking, like, you said you liked to dabble in Greek mythology, but you haven't read like one of the biggest like OG Greek mythology retelling novels. That's exactly what I'm telling you. And so this is the year that I'm gonna do that. It is, let me remind myself what it's about. Okay, it's essentially set after Troy falls, and it follows the perspectives of multiple female protagonists, such as some of, I think, the Amazon princess, Penelope, who's married to Odysseus, or at least eventually. Oh, she's awaiting the turn. Yeah, so Penelope. The three goddesses who started it all, and yes, I believe it's them. So it follows multiple female perspectives after this event. Lovely, amazing. I might get around to this year. This might be one of the ones. I then we're gonna move on to the one classic that I'm gonna dedicate myself to trying to read this year. Last year it was The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I didn't read. So this year it's The Yellow Wallpaper plus, this is a 2-in-1, Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. The Yellow Wallpaper is like, it's one of those literary references that I feel like you just kind of have to know, like, because it is very, I think it was very influential, and a lot of people reference it in the same way that like a lot of people will reference like Hamlet. It's like entrenched in like certain like aspects of literary culture. I believe there's a lot of like feminist quality to it because it's about a woman who I think is like locked in a room by her husband, and then it's like metaphorically like, but also like it's, I think she starts becoming the wallpaper, I think, and it's like a metaphor. And it's a very, very short book. It is like 20 pages long. So that's the length of The Yellow Wallpaper, this section here, which obviously includes like the first couple of intro pages. And then the rest of it is Herland, which follows a group of 3 men as they enter a female-only society. And that is what the rest of this copy is. So The Yellow Wallpaper, I think, is her most, like, more famous, influential work. And then because it's such a small work, they've included a 2-in-1 copy. So I'm very excited to read this. I think I had this, and I was going to talk about it last year. And I was going to say, let me read this one last year. But I honestly think I cut it out of the video because the video got too long. So here we are a year later. This year's the year, you know? I then have, my next genre, I'm getting really good at introducing these, is nonfiction. Did I read a nonfiction book this year? Do you know what my story graph says that I did? Because I think I read a play that was like a verbatim play, so therefore it was like based on true events. But I don't think I really sat down and read like what we would generally consider to be nonfiction. I mean, I read half of my dad's book, and my dad writes nonfiction, and I was kind of like proofreading it, but I never finished it because we parted ways and his manuscript went with him. That's my excuse for that one. Sorry, father. But that book is published now, and it's well worth the read. The half of it that I read, lovely. It's called, I actually don't know what it's called. He changed the title. The title of it was like the same for years, but it's changed. But I'll like flash it up on the screen. Dad, you're welcome for shouting out your novel. But the one that I want to read is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. And it has no blurb. And I've tried to find one and it doesn't have one, but I think it might be about talking to strangers, but I'm not too sure. That's something I struggle with, you know? But the real reason I picked this up is because I read another book by him. It might have been called Blink. I will double check that and again flash it up somewhere on the screen. And I really enjoyed it. I really got on with the writing style because I think I've often avoided non-fiction because I did not think it would hold my interest as much as I find certain topics really interesting, and as much as I think I can find anything interesting because I love learning. Like, will the narrative actually capture me? How much will I have to switch my brain on to, like, understand what they're, like, telling me? That kind of thing. Whereas the last book I read of his was very anecdotal. So he took a lot of, like, because it's a book on psychology, and he is a psychologist. And so they run these, like, psychology, like, experiments and tests and things. And he essentially just takes that and then he tells you about them. And he kind of tells you, like, the results, but in a very kind of, like, anecdotal way. And I really got on with that. I really got on with, like, the kind of storytelling aspect to it, rather than the kind of, like, laying down of facts, which I think is what I always kind of assumed that non-fiction writing was. I've come to kind of realize since that it's not always like that. I mean, I stay clear of those kind of books, so I don't really know what is out there regarding that. I don't know whether that's a misinformed kind of statement or assumption, but yeah. So I've had this one. I found this in a charity shop and I was like, oh, I recognize this author. I'm gonna pick this up because it's cheap. And this year's the year. I think, do you know, if I read one non-fiction book in a year, I'm doing well for myself. There's a few others that I also want to read, but again, similarly to, like, the classics and the Greek mythology and stuff, it's like I like to just pace myself with them, and I like to just indulge in them every now and again, you know? Moving on to another kind of genre, we have the kind of mystery. I think this is primarily more mystery than thriller. In my brain, they're kind of like, similarly with sci-fi and dystopian, like I mentioned earlier, they're just kind of like, they go together, you know, really well, and I think they often overlap. But I believe both of these are more mystery. Both of them, as you will see by the fact that I haven't removed the stickers, I got at a reduced price. So the first one I'll start with, as I slowly start trying to remove this sticker that I never removed when I bought it, is The Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. This one, I walked into a Waterstones one day and I saw it on the table, and it's got, as you can see, a very bright cover, and I went, that kind of looks like a fun, goofy time. And the thing is that I actually really enjoy, like, a mystery novel, and I realized this when I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I was like, this is a genre that I never actually normally read. But I do genuinely really enjoy them when I, like, read the right one. But it seems like, to me, in a way, I think it feels like an untouchable genre because I don't see a lot of people talking about it on social media, which is admittedly where I get a lot of my book recommendations from. But also because it is so overlapped with thriller, it's then kind of hard because then people are giving you thriller recommendations, and it's like, I enjoy that genre too. And I haven't read a lot of thrillers recently, and it is another one that I feel like I need to, like, find a way to hack into, even if people aren't recommending them to me. Because again, that's a genre that feels kind of a bit untouchable to me as well. I suppose I was just kind of, I don't know if it's true, and again, this might just be an assumption, but I do feel like it's hard to find the kind of mystery book that I enjoy because there is such an overlap. And so when people are talking about, now here's this thriller book, even if it's got mystery elements because it's being marketed mainly as a thriller, I'm like, I don't know if that's really what I'm looking for, if that makes sense. But anyway, but I saw this, like I said, in a Waterstones, and then I later on went to a Works, and it was going for like $150, I think. So I was like, I will purchase it because it seems fun. It's a fun little mystery about someone who works in a bookshop, or they're a bookseller, and she reads a lot of like serial killer, like murder podcasts. Like, she's one of those. And then someone starts working at her bookshop and she starts becoming like morbidly obsessed with them. So actually, maybe it is more a bit thriller than a mystery. Maybe everything I said has been a lie thus far. But I assumed it was more of a mystery just based off of like... But either way, it seemed like, I was like, I haven't heard anyone talking about this and I don't know what it's going to be like. But I picked it up in that Waterstones and I read the blurb and I went, huh, that seems kind of interesting. I'll keep my eye out on that one. And then it was reduced and I said, I'm going to buy it. And yeah, because I don't read much mystery and thriller, I do want to make more of an effort to read more of that. Because at the minute, my reading is very dominated by fantasy and very also kind of dominated by a lot of like literary fiction, like standalones. Like either, as you will see later, it's like a literary fiction standalone, or it's a massive like 3-book, 4-book long fantasy series that has like currently got me in a chokehold. I feel like I have to read those before I can gain any other books. So the different genres that I can grasp onto, I am trying to read as well. This will be one of them. The other one, as you saw a little flash of earlier, is Where Sleeping Girls Lie. Don't know what this one is about at all. However, in my defense, she wrote Ace of Spades, yes, which I read quite a few years ago. I borrowed a copy off of a friend of mine at the time, and I loved it. Like, I genuinely thought it was one of the few books that I rated like 5 stars, and that was back in my like stingy 5-star like era where I never gave out 5 stars. But it was a book that I legitimately like felt like I couldn't put it down, and I was so like, oh my god, over the mystery of it. And so yeah, as soon as I saw this reduced in the works, I was like, I have to pick it up. I don't care what it's about, because this author, I've read one book of theirs, but it was so good, so I trust them to do it again. So just from reading the first paragraph, it's about a girl who's going to like a private boarding school, prestigious school kind of environment, and then her roommate dies unexpectedly, and people think that the main girl has something to do with it, and that's all I know. I now have a kind of like miscellaneous standalone book pile. These are books where it's like, I don't know necessarily what genre you would class them in. In my brain, they're very like literary fiction, but I don't know for sure if they are. Some of them are more like YA novels. So yeah, we're just gonna go through, not 100% on like what you would class them genre-wise. But the first one I have is Girl, Woman, Other. What I do know about this one, before I go and read the blurb, is that I believe it tells the perspective, like it tells stories of like multiple female perspectives of like different backgrounds and race, and like class, I'm gonna assume, but I'll check that one. And it's very poetic, I think. Like, the narrative style is very unique in this novel. And it's not as, like, your typical, like, story following someone. Like, I think it's quite a poetic narrative style. Set in Britain, it follows 12 very different characters on an entwined journey of discovery. It is future, it is past, it is fiction, it is history, it is a novel about who we are now. And so I've heard a lot of really positive things about this one. Obviously, it was the winner of the Booker Prize in 2019. And I saw it in a charity shop, and I was like, this is one that I have heard a lot about, and I think it's worth reading. 2026, guys. Maybe this is the year. I also then have The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I don't think I said who the other one was by. I mean, you might have been able to read it, but just in case. Bernadine Evaristo wrote Girl, Woman, Other. Anyway, The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. This one, I do vaguely know the plot of. It's something to do with, like, pretending to be someone else and, like, twins, maybe. Basically revealing I actually know nothing about it. Yeah, Stella and Desiree are identical twins. I knew that. Okay, so it's about two twin sisters, and they both grow up in this southern black community, and then at 16 they both run away. And now, like, years later, a lot has changed, and one of the twin sisters is living back in the black community that she tried to escape and doing her thing there, and the other sister is passing as a white woman. She's married to this man who knows nothing of her past, and that's all we know. That's all I've read on the blurb, and that's all I'm gonna share. So it sounds really, really intriguing, and similarly, I've heard some really positive things about this book, and I'm really excited to read it. And similarly, I think I found this in a TK Maxx, so it was less than your average priced book, probably about a $5. And I was like, yes, I think this is worth picking up. I think it's worth reading. This year, guys, this year could be the year. I feel like such a scammer saying this now, because it's like, well, it's literally been proven that, like, all the ones I was like, this is the year. It wasn't the year. So we'll see if it happens. But it could happen. Guys, let's have faith. Let's have faith. This is another one that I similarly heard a lot about. It's an international #1 bestseller, as most books often appear to be. I never understood that as a kid. I was like, how can it be the #1 international bestseller when this book also said they were the #1 international bestseller? Explain that one to me. And I still don't fully understand it. But I don't need to. I just need to know, okay, people think this book's good. So The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Leftery. It is about a beekeeper and his wife who are living in a beautiful Syrian city of Aleppo. And then they are forced to flee, and they have to embark on a perilous journey through Turkey and Greece towards an uncertain future in Britain. I think it's supposed to be very kind of heartwarming, and to be honest, educational on what it is like to flee your country, which is obviously a horrible thing. And so yeah, this is supposed to be a really good read this year, guys. Now, fun fact about these books is that I got like 3 of these books from the same charity shop on like the same day. So Beekeeper of Aleppo and Girl, Woman, Other, and then Daisy Jones and the Six, I got all from a charity shop. I felt like I was winning that day. I felt like I was on top of the world. I always look at books in the charity shop and I'm like, no. But that day, I was like, oh my god. This charity shop has it all. Like, these are 3 books that I've like heard of and I've wanted to read, and now I've got them. Now I'm winning. Daisy Jones and the Six, I do know, like, not a lot, but it's very popular. Obviously, there's a movie series about it now. I have read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, as many of us probably have. That book did numbers in like 2020 and 2021, and to be honest, for a pretty good reason. It was a very good book, and I think this is like her other probably like top like regarded book. Like, everyone who was like, okay, if you enjoyed that one, read this by Taylor Jenkins Reid as well. And I know a lot of her books are supposed to be like really, like, they're very highly rated. People tend to love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have another one, digital. I think it's Maybe in Another Life or something, like, or like 1 year later. I don't remember what the other one I have is, but I think it was going for like £1 on iBooks, and I was like, oh yeah, I read something by her. She's pretty good. She's pretty well rated. I've always meant to read something else by her, but I just never have, because it's never been like one of my like, yeah, I really want this one, like, I really need this one, guys, please, my birthday, please, Christmas, or like I've never seen it in a charity shop until now, and so now it's the time. I know it is about like the lead singer of a band, and they go around and they do band things. Yeah, guys. No, literally, according to the blurb, for real, it is just about someone who like leads, like, the band is called Daisy Jones and the Six, and their band is going crazy. It's doing big numbers, and no one knows why until now, and that's pretty much all it's telling me. So I wasn't that far off. I'm actually really good at my job. I then have Radio Silence by Alice Osman. This year is turning out to be a year of returning to authors who I read like one book of, really enjoyed, and then haven't read anything else since. This is like, what, the fourth one? Because I did read, obviously, Heartstopper, that's what Alice Osman is known for. Nick and Charlie, Heartstopper, that, she wrote Heartstopper, she did the graphic novels, she like draws them and everything. I think I read those on like the Webtoons app that like I think you can read them for free on that, because I think that's where it originally was being published. So technically I've read more than one, but I also read Loveless by her because that follows an asexual girl discovering her asexuality and like aromanticism, and as someone who is also asexual, that was really important for me to read about someone else with that experience, because sometimes it feels really lonely and it's quite isolating, and I'm not gonna go into it, but you know, it's good to read from people who like get it, you know. And so as far as I'm aware, this book I think also follows someone kind of exploring their identity with asexuality or aromanticism, one of the two. I'm pretty sure, from what I remember from like the discourse a few years back when Heartstopper was in its prime and everyone else was like, well, if you liked that, here's all her other books. But yeah, but it follows Frances this time. Yeah, I think it's about a girl and she meets a guy, and then it's like a lot of Alice Osman's are very, they follow teenagers set in high school, very much kind of just going through life and discovering, like they're very what's the word? There's a genre name for this, and I can't remember it. I've forgotten the name, but I know what I'm on about. Maybe future me will remember, and I can like be like, this is what past Kate is trying to get across. But yeah, and low-key, I love that. I really love just reading about people's lives and like seeing them make bad choices, but then also understanding why and being like, okay, like, but like how are you gonna get through this, like, and waiting for them to like get it, and like something about just reading like people's lives. I'm like, yeah, because it's real and it's authentic and it's like heavily relatable in a way that sometimes people running around with swords and like battling dragons isn't, you know? And I do enjoy that. I then have Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Similarly, this also got made into a show, and it is very, very popular. I think it's, this is like a game almost. This is like, how much can I remember before I read the blurb? A woman who is doing like a cooking show, but then it kind of becomes like an experimental science show, and then she's like woman in STEM. And I love that. Yeah, I think I was pretty right. It's like she's doing this science job at an all-male team, and she's forced to resign, and then reluctantly signs on to be the host of a cooking show. But because of the experience that she has like as a chemist and her like scientific knowledge, she's able to like blend the two into like this really unique like perspective on like cooking and stuff, and suddenly housewives everywhere love it and start challenging the status quo, and it's feminist and it's great, and it was a really popular book like 2 years ago and I didn't read it, so now it's time. Last of this kind of like genre, this one I'm pretty sure is literary fiction with like a romance subplot. I know it follows two people who are kind of in this kind of flawed relationship, self-discovery. Yeah, I mean, this is just from the back, which I'll read from. It's a contemporary love story like no other. Regan and Aldo allow us to explore the nature of love, what it means to be unwell, and how to face the fractures of ourselves and still love as if we're not broken. It's another one of those, we're following people's lives, and they're not doing well in their lives, but they're like getting through it. Similar to what I was saying about Radio Silence, similar appeal for me. The kind of next genre, they all happen to be digital copies, but that is kind of Japanese litfic, which you might have noticed, you might not. It's become like really popular. I feel like if you go into a bookstore and you look at the little tables that they have, you will probably see something written by a Japanese author, and it's got something to do with a coffee shop and something to do with a cat. It's become a thing. And so at some point I've been meaning to do this like the whole of last year, but I really want to make a video where I read these kind of Japanese litfic novels, and so I have 4 on the roster, if you will. One of them is actually a physical copy, but it's at uni. That one is Goodnight Tokyo, I believe. Because I don't have the book on me, I can't quite remember the name of the author. Same goes for all of these actually, but I will put up images of them. That one's about a taxi driver, and I think it's about his kind of like, he works really late into the night, and it's about conversations and things that he has with different people getting his taxi in Tokyo. Which I hadn't actually, that is one of my more unique ones where I didn't see anybody talk about it. But I saw it in a bookshop and I read the blurb and I went, yeah, I want to read that. Another one, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This one was really popular, and I think it is still popular. I think it's like a series, or I don't know if they're... I get the impression that it could be one of those things where it's like same kind of world, but it like follows different people, so I don't know if it is like a proper series, because I'm kind of planning on just reading the first one and then probably not continuing with the rest of them. I'm not too sure. It depends how much I love it, but I know that it's got something to do with like going into a coffee shop, and then the coffee shop enables people to do like time travel, I believe. So it's got some sci-fi elements in that one. Another one, The Kamigawa Food Detectives. That one, it's got something to do with the cat, and it's got something to do with the cafe. And detective is in the title, so I know it's got like a mystery element. That one, I think it's a series, because I didn't realize, and I bought it for 99p because I was like, oh, this could be really good for this video that I want to do. And then the sequel came out like a couple of months later, so again, we'll see how I'm feeling with the first one, and then if I really enjoy it, I will read the second one. Another one is Butter. That one is more of like a thriller kind of vibe. That's all I really know, I think, is that it's got more of like a mystery. Like, all I know is that there's like a cow on the cover and then like a knife with like blood dripping, and it's like, when I read the blurb way back when, before I purchased, it was very like thrillery-esque. And then similarly, same vein, I think, because it's not just a lot of Japanese fiction that we've seen having like a bit of an insurgence and a bit of a boom. I have also noticed a lot of kind of Korean fiction and stuff. This one I wouldn't say has been like involved in that boom, but it is also written by an East Asian author, and that is Pachinko, which I believe from memory, I'm very sorry if I've gotten this wrong, but I think it follows a multi-generational kind of family. So it starts, you know, with one generation, and then we see the other generations in Vietnam, I believe. I'm gonna fact check that one now. I was actually completely wrong. I don't know where I got Vietnam from. It's Korea and Japan, and the author is Korean, I believe. And it did get turned into a drama series as well. But it's a historical saga following a Korean family through 4 generations as they fight for survival in Korea and Japan. So yeah, I've been meaning to read that one for a really long time. I remember after I read A Little Life, and whilst that book can be kind of, it's got mixed like receivings because it was a very kind of traumatic book. But I really liked the narrative style, and I really liked the Bildungsroman quality of it, which is, Bildungsroman is when you follow someone's kind of story from like early childhood into like to the end of their life. So I would say like Jane Eyre is a famous example of a Bildungsroman, because it kind of follows the span of her life in a way. And I really enjoy books like that. similar appeal with like some of the other stuff I've talked about. I just really enjoy reading about people's lives. And so yeah, when I read A Little Life, I was then like, what are more books like this? And Pachinko was one of the ones that came up. And so I've been aware of it for a really long time, and it's kind of always been on like my list of like ones I want to get. And then I think it was reduced on Apple iBooks at one point, and I was like, yes, this is my time, I'm gonna buy it. But because it's such a hefty book, like I've seen it in person and it's like very many pages, I'm like, with books that big, I do get hesitant to kind of jump into them. I would say I didn't really used to in the past, but I think now, because I perceive my like reading to be a bit slower than I would desire it to be, just because like life gets really busy, to then have like a really big book like that, I'm just aware that I could be stuck on it for a really long time, especially also because it's a digital copy that I have. And again, I think I mentioned that I struggle a bit more with reading digital novels, and I think part of that's to do with like you can't see the physical progress, and therefore I get like less serotonin-y boosts from it. There's probably something there. I don't know the science to describe it, but it's something there probably. Another genre that you've all been waiting for, of course. I've hyped up how much I love fantasy quite a lot this video. I've talked about it quite a lot. And so I have numerous, at least 5 fantasy books that come as a part of a series. So the massive bulk of the books that I want to read this year will end up being these books, just because of the nature of fantasy authors just love to spend multiple books going through their story with you. So just off the top of the list, we have The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This, now you may not know, but there's this thing on TikTok, or at least there was, or just in the general book community, known as the lesbian trifecta, right? Which is about 3 different like fantasy series that have lesbian relationships in them that are really good. All of them are written by POC authors in like really great stuff, and it became this trifecta, like that's what it was kind of colloquially known as. I have read 2 of the 3. So I read She Who Became the Sun was one of them, and then what's the other one called? The Jasmine Throne was the other one, both of which I absolutely like adored. Like I love both of those books. Both of those series ended up with 5 stars from me. Oh, I love lesbians, and I love the world building, and I love the approach to fantasy. It was so like, it was just a breath of fresh air, you know? And so this is the 3rd installment, is why I'm explaining this. So, do I actually really know? Like, once upon a time, I did know what this book was about, but I've wanted it for so long. But I've kind of gone through each of these trifecta, like, series, like, one at a time. So I started with Jasmine Throne, and then the next year I was like, okay, this is my year for She Who Became the Sun. And this is my year for The Unbroken, which is a trilogy. I think one of the reasons I also was hesitant, because this first one came out, I'm not sure if the second one was out by the time I initially heard about this series, and then the 3rd one came out very recently. But I managed to get the 3rd one for Christmas, even though I already had the first 2, I think, from my birthday, potentially this year, which is in June. Either way, this year I would like to attempt to read this trilogy. Let's just say it's a very political fantasy, and it's got lesbians in it. What more do you guys need to know? What more do I need to know? I don't need to know anything above that. I've said this before, I love a political fantasy, and I love lesbians. Funnily enough. So, there was not much else in the negotiation of me wanting this book. Another one, this is a duology. One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is an incredibly popular duology. I'm trying to think when it came out, actually. Because I think this one's been around... Oh, actually, not as long as I thought it had. It was first published in 2022. So actually a lot more recent than I thought, for some reason. No idea what it's about. this is one of those ones where I'm like, yeah, people recommended it to me enough times where they were like, fantasy novels you should read, fantasy series you should read, like, what are some of the best fantasy out there? Everyone was going on about this duology, and so I was like, okay guys, I will read it. Okay, the main character is called Elspeth Spindle. Elspeth spelled Elspeth. F-T-H, you know? I don't know if this is like one of those instances where they're just trying to come up with like the most unique name possible or not, you know? I'm just gonna read the first bit because I'm reading this is one of those blurbs where like there's so much context. I feel like there's so much that you need to understand about the world and like there's a lot to take in. So I'm just gonna read you the first part. I mean, at the end it also says lush gothic fantasy debut. So there's gothic themes in it, which I also love. But yeah, so the initial paragraph, we have Elspeth Spindle needs more than luck to stay safe in the eerie, mist-locked kingdom of Blunder. She needs a monster. She calls him the Nightmare, an ancient mercurial spirit trapped in her head. He protects her. He keeps her secrets. But nothing comes for free, especially magic. And then it says some other things, and then we learn that Nightmare is slowly, darkly taking over her mind, and she might not be able to stop him. The stakes, guys. The stakes are going to be high. This is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and it is a trilogy. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I'm trying to point it out to you. I'm like, somewhere right there. No. Right there. That's the other two. All I know about this one is that it's linked with, like, a lot of King Arthur tales, like Knights of the Round Table energy. And I've heard a lot of people say really, really positive things about this one. This one I've probably known about since 2021, I want to say. If it wasn't published by then. It was published 2020. But yeah, I've just heard very positive things. It's a trilogy. Something to do with Arthur, that kind of vibe, I'm pretty sure. That's all I needed to know. We then have Scythe. This is a trilogy, but I think it comes with like a novella type novel at the end, which is about like a similar width of novel. So it looks like a 4-book series. So I don't really know what's happening there. I know this is dystopian, actually, now that I mention it. I think it's YA. Now, YA for me recently hasn't been my favourite. I think there's just an element of maybe just growing out of it a little bit. Not that I think that adults can enjoy, like, young adult novels. I think that many of them can. But I think it feels more like I've seen the other side now. And I think sometimes when you're reading from characters' perspectives who, like, they're still in high school, and I say that and it sounds kind of crazy, and people are probably a little bit like, but what do you mean, because you were literally in high school like 2 years ago? Like, you're not so far removed from it. But there's just part of me doesn't enjoy reading about that experience that much anymore. Not that I think this is about people set in high school, but just something to do with YA novels. I think sometimes you can tell they're written for a younger audience, and it's like, well, when I was 15, I was that audience, and so I loved it. But now that I'm a little bit older, I'm like, okay, I can kind of tell this wasn't really written for people my age, you know? So I'm a little bit nervous about this series, but I've wanted to read it, like, ever since I got on BookTok, I suppose. Ever since I realised I had free will and could start, like, buying books of my own, I've always wanted to read this series, and I have heard quite a few good things about it, but it's been a while. Like, I haven't heard anyone talk about this series for a while, so I don't fully remember what people were saying, but I remember that it appealed to me. And it's been one of those ones where I feel like I would be betraying part of myself. Like, I feel like if I didn't read them, I'd always look at them and go, oh, I always meant to read those. So here I am, hoping to get around to them this year. I think if any, out of all the books that I potentially will not read this year, this might be one of them. But at the same time, I actually decide most of the books I read based on a Wheel of Fortune. So I don't really choose them, I let fate decide. So it could happen. In a perfect world, the only way to die is to be gleaned by a professional scythe. When Citra and Rowan are chosen to be apprentice scythes, they know they have no option but to learn the art of killing. However, the terrifying responsibility of choosing their victims is just the start. Corruption is the order of the day, and Citra and Rowan need to stick together to fight it. Then they are told that one of them will have to glean the other. Low-key, that actually sounds really sick. I knew there was a reason I wanted to read this series. I knew. My final series, my final kind of books that I wanna try read this year. I'm really, really excited about this series. Do I know anything about it? No. Could not tell you. But I'm really excited because I've heard so many good things. And I'm like, people are really recommending, and something about it just really resonates somehow, some way. And I'm like, yes, I feel like they're going to be really good. And that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This one's got quite a short blurb, so I'm just going to read it. Jade is the lifeblood of the city of Janloon, a stone that enhances a warrior's natural strength and speed. It is mined, traded, stolen, and killed for, all controlled by two families equal in their power and ruthlessness. When a modern drug emerges that allows anyone, even foreigners, to wield jade, simmering tension between the two clans erupt into open war. I could be really, really wrong, but there might be Romeo and Juliet influences to this story. But take that with a pinch of salt, because I do not remember. But this is a trilogy. I think the books only get longer from here. Yeah. It's like, this is one of those like series where like, as you go on, the books just get fatter and fatter. So by the end of the third one, so I just know it's going to be like a hefty experience, but I'm kind of ready. I'm excited to experience it because I just have this feeling that like it's going to be good. Like if you've got that much to say, I feel like it's going to be good. And that kind of wraps up this video of all of the books that I'm going to attempt to read in 2026. But first and foremost, I will be finishing the books that I said I was going to read in 2025. I feel like because I made that video, and so many of them haven't been read, most of which I did take them to uni, and I think that's part of the thing. A lot of the ones that I actually didn't read were standalones that I took with me to uni and then didn't have time to read. But this term, I'm determined to try and lock in, but we will see if that happens, because I wanted that for myself last term, and it didn't happen. So, but I have a mission, and I'm gonna attempt to read them. But we'll see. And I will attempt to read these ones, but similarly we will see, and you'll probably not hear whether I did or not until I check back in at the end of the year, but that's just something you can look forward to, the entirety of your 2026. You can go, I'm really looking forward to the next New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, because I really want to know if Katie read any of the books that she said she was going to read. Yeah. We'll see. It's a mystery. It's a mystery, for sure. I suppose if you enjoyed this video, it kind of marks like a year of me being on YouTube. Have I been that active on YouTube? No. Am I like, what do you call it, advertising myself? No. So, because of that, a like really goes a long way. You know, when I click on my video and I see, oh my goodness, 3 people likes my video, I know it's not all in vain. But also, like, if you feel thus inclined and you would like to give me a positive review, please do. Also, because this is like something I should say, let me know what you're planning to read in 2026. Let me know how many of the books you wanted to read in 2025 did you actually read, you know? What are books that you're really looking forward to this year? Okay, bye!